Welcome to the session on assessment and analysis under the Kilos-Unlad phase-in stage. This session is divided into two parts. Part 1, that will be the family risk and vulnerability assessment tool, and Part 2 is on how to formulate the case assessment statement. Previously, you were refreshed on the Social Welfare and Development Indicators, or SWEDI, which is one of the primary tools in assessing the well-being of the Pantawid households. This tool shall be complemented with the Family Risk and Vulnerability tool to help you identify the risk level categories that will guide you in coming up with your comprehensive case assessment statement. Before we dive in, here are the session objectives. Number 1. Understand how to use the Family Risk and Vulnerability Assessment tool, or CM Form number 3. Number 2. Describe the different classifications of the risks and vulnerabilities using the FRVA tool. Number 3. Differentiate the 3 risk level categories. And number 4. Learn how to compose a case assessment statement. The first 5 years of the beneficiary's exposure to the program shall be devoted in identifying their strengths and opportunities for behavioral and social change. Hence, risks, threats, and vulnerabilities shall be periodically identified and assessed to resolve hindrances impeding the capacity of the household to improve their well-being. In 4Ps, case managers are guided with 2 assessment tools, the SWEDI and the Family Risk and Vulnerability Assessment tool. The Family Risk and Vulnerability Assessment tool is adapted from the Social Protection, Vulnerability and Adaptability Manual, or the SPVAM. Along with the SWEDI results, the information gathered in this third stage of assessment using the FRV tool will serve as an in-depth assessment in identifying needs, problems, strengths, and resources available for the 4Ps household. Such will be the basis in crafting the household intervention plan. It shall also identify internal and external risk factors and vulnerabilities that may disrupt the progress of the family in complying with the program's conditions and attaining a higher level of well-being. The information collected using these instruments are validated and triangulated using other data gathering techniques such as collateral interviews. The case manager shall clearly explain the purpose of the assessment and its benefits to the household beneficiary and ensure proper and mutual understanding. Before doing the FRV assessment, let us first define what is risk and what is vulnerability. Risk is the probability of harmful consequences or expected losses resulting from the interaction between the natural or human-induced hazards and vulnerable conditions. These losses include deaths, injuries, damage to properties and livelihoods, destruction of economic activities, and damage to the environment. On the other hand, vulnerability is defined as the condition determined by physical, social, economic, and environmental factors or processes which increases the susceptibility of a community to the impact of hazards. Primarily, we refer to the vulnerable as the households and communities that are susceptible to shocks and stresses. These shocks and stresses include physical, biological, socioeconomic events such as accidents and illnesses resulting in disability, loss of employment or inflation resulting in poverty, or environmental disasters that endanger the lives and welfare of the entire community. When these shocks and stresses occur, the vulnerable who are mostly poor will remain in poverty. Furthermore, households and communities that are currently non-poor will fall below the poverty line or will become poor if they experience the same hazards. These are the things that we want to assess using CM Form number 3 so that we could provide grounded and appropriate interventions for the 4Ps families and households. Now let's apply the tools to the case of the Antonio family. As you may recall, in the SWEDI discussion, the Antonio family is at level 2 or subsistence level of well-being. Now, let us try to determine their risk level and the specific risks and vulnerabilities that need to be prioritized. You may also gain access to the attached case study to refresh you on the family's background information. What do we know about this family? The Antonio family is composed of Aling Tere, her children Marga, Christian, and Tina, and her granddaughter Mika. Using the CM Form 3, let's take a deeper look at the risks and vulnerabilities of the Antonio family. Our respondent was Teresita C. Antonio, the household head of the Antonio family. They live in San Pablo City. Now, based on the case study, it was not mentioned whether the family was previously referred to any services. Thus, we skipped the second question. Among the items listed under economic, we were able to know that Marga was recently hospitalized after giving birth and was prescribed with medicines to recover. But they could not afford the medical expenses. After giving birth, Marga had hypokalemia. On the other hand, Dina and Mika were underweight. We found out that Aling Tere suffered years of abuse from her estranged husband. It was also noted that Christian, Aling Tere's only son, witnessed a lot of the couple's fights. Christian exhibited unusual behavior which might be an effect of the domestic violence he witnessed. On the other hand, Marga, who recently gave birth, is only 16 years old and considered as a case of early pregnancy. Lastly, it was mentioned that there is an upcoming 2-year construction in the area which might be considered as a hazard since it is near the family's residence. No other information was mentioned on the other items in the checklist. Now, based on the gathered facts, what do you think is the family's risk level category? That's correct! The case of the Antonio family is high risk level because of the urgency of the health situation of the family. 2 children are underweight and 1 is suffering from a potassium deficiency disease. Now that we are well aware of the family risk and vulnerability assessment tool, let's move on to the next part. The output of the assessment and analysis stage is the case assessment statement. Once you have gathered pertinent information about the family, you are now ready to formulate your case assessment statement. To guide you in formulating the case assessment statement, here are the 3 components by McMahon. Number 1. Opening statement. Who has the problem and why does the problem exist at this time? For example, why is the person seeking help or assistance? The why may consist of immediate problems influenced or may be a result of a series of problems. The most directly related to the problem is the cause that is cited in the assessment statement. Number 2. Change potential statements, on the other hand, consist of the presentation factors which may affect the resolution of the problem. These factors are problem, person, and the environment. This may answer the following questions. What is the household's level of well-being and what concerns need to be addressed immediately? How does the SWIDI results correlate or intercede with the findings of the family risk and vulnerability assessment? How does the family perceive these needs and conditions? How are they affected by the problem and how do they plan to address the risks and vulnerabilities? What is the most urgent among the risks and vulnerabilities identified? And what is the implication if they are left unaddressed? What are the family's strengths and motivations? What are the external resources and how could these resources contribute or hinder the family from overcoming the problem? Number 3. Finally, the case manager's judgment about the seriousness or urgency of the problem. What is the most urgent among the risks and vulnerabilities or problems identified? What is the risk level category? And what is the implication if not addressed or attended? Now let's come up with an assessment statement for the Antonio family. The health concerns of the Antonio family needs to be addressed immediately. Marga's illness, having low potassium level, may be a life-threatening condition if not immediately attended. Dina and Mika being underweight is a manifestation of malnutrition. Their body weights are considered too low to be healthy. It seems that the family is having difficulty in addressing these health concerns since Marga had just been hospitalized after giving birth. It incurred medical expenses in which they are still recovering. On the other hand, Christian's defiant behavior might have been caused by his father's loss and witnessing domestic violence. This needs to be further assessed to affirm correlation. Aling Tere's reasons for gambling have to be explored as well. In spite of the situation, Marga is eager to go back to school, which is highly supported by her mother. Also, Aling Tere has been showing courage in raising her children on her own. She finds delight and happiness in the presence of her children. She appears to be decisive on what she thinks is better for Marga at this time. However, she needs support in managing the behavior of Christian. It was noted that the barangay captain is very keen on the health programs of his community. This can be an opportunity for the family to easily access health assistance in order to address Marga's hypokalemia and Dina and Mika's malnutrition. Lastly, although there is a risk of the family's income dwindling due to the health concerns, the construction of a new building nearby might also increase the patronage of Aling Teres sari-sari store in Ihawan. The Antonio family is at high-risk level category. If not addressed immediately, these health concerns can worsen and it might drain whatever income Aling Teres, a single mother, is gaining from their small sari-sari store in Ihawan. It might put them at greater health and economic risks. Great job! You were able to do a risk and vulnerability assessment for the Antonio family. How was your experience? Now, take one of your own case studies and go through the same process. Take time to do this assignment as it will be used in the coming sessions. Thank you for joining us in this session. Hope you were able to learn how to do a case assessment statement guided by the 3D and the family risk and vulnerability assessment tool. Congratulations and see you in the next session.